I'm really glad that you got the help that you need. But I don't know if I want you working in my ER.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of The Pitt. Today we're going to be discussing Season 2, Episode 7, covering the hour from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. I'm David Chen here with Patrick Klepek, and here on Decoding TV, we cover all of the individual cases that are going on in the show. We talk about our personal reactions to them. We have a doctor of the week that we're going to name, or medical worker of the week that we're going to name at the very end. And then we got a bunch of emails and feedback that you can write into either at youtube.com/decodingtv or decodingtv@gmail.com or decodingtv.com. Many ways to reach us. So we will be discussing some of your feedback and reactions to the podcast and to the show. So let's get into it. I do have to acknowledge one really huge thing, which is that during last week's episode of the podcast, I asked people for their suggestions on what would be a good name for a segment of the show where the Pit is at its most preachy, right? Like every week, the Pit has a very preachy segment.
The preach.
And I said like the preach pit, which is like terrible. And multiple people wrote in and they said, hey, the real answer that is staring you right in the face is the pulpit.
Yeah.
The pulpit. I don't know why I didn't see it. So from now on, whenever the Pit gets very preachy, which it does this week as well, it's going to, we'll call that part of the pulpit. So thank you to everyone who wrote into decodingtv@gmail.com. Obviously, our listeners are more clever than me specifically. I'm not going to say anything about you, Patrick. All right. So let's get to it. What is going on this week on the Pit? We have a few major cases. I would say probably one of the higher profile ones is the case of Officer Hiro, Hiro, who suffers from a high velocity GSW or a gunshot wound because of a warehouse robbery gone sideways. He's brought in along with Dr. Abbott, all decked out in his SWAT gear. And he, by the way, is a SWAT physician, which I didn't even know was a thing. But apparently they have them.
Sure. Did I look that up to verify it? No. Am I just swallowing that whole and saying, sure, find the Pit? I am.
I mean, that is it's like, wow, they're really trying to make this guy like one of the most badass characters on television.
Oh, well, I mean, multiple characters seem like they're ready to jump into bed with him over the course of this episode.
Yeah. I mean, multiple
Can't really blame
them.
Can't really blame them. Can't really blame them.
So anyway, they bring in this guy who apparently Dr. Abbott tried to give him a intubation while in transit to try to save his life, but there was respiratory failure, and so I think it's Dr. Robbie that says, "Hey, what should we evaluate to figure out what is causing the respiratory failure?" There is a acronym called DOPE, which stands for displacement, obstruction, pneumothorax, which, by the way, is a collapsed lung. It's when air leaks into the space between the lung and the chest, preventing the lung from expanding, or equipment failure. And it turns out in this case, it is displacement, a transected trachea. Basically, there's a freaking gigantic hole in his neck, and he is unable to breathe. So Dr. Robbie gets a neonatal mask because, he's always using those MacGyver-style tools that you wouldn't know about because of all of his experience. And they use it to keep the officer alive. They eventually are able to save him. Apparently, it was an AR-15 round that really got him. And we also see Dr. Abbott and Dr. Al-Hashimi bond over their work in the field. I really like the scene where they have a great connection. And then Dr. Abbott says to Dr. Robbie, "She seems cool." And then he says,
She seems cool. Yep, maybe. I could be around long enough to find out.
I just think that's funny because your interaction with someone, like how many interactions you have with someone and the quality of those interactions in a very short period of time can like really determine how well you get along with them. And if you have like one good interaction versus 10 bad ones and one good one, it's really going to shape your experience. And if Dr. Robbie and Dr. Al-Hashimi had met under different circumstances, perhaps they would be less combative. Anyway, any reactions to this subplot, Patrick Klepek?
I think it's like in the structure of the show, the ongoing joke is that at some point they're just going to inevitably announce the Pit night shift and just have the Pit for most of the year, But, we do get occasional glimpses of characters that kind of cross over as like one shift ends and another shift begins. Yeah. And then also, characters that are pulling double shifts, or there's a sequence in this episode where there's somebody from the night shift who's grabbing a nap like in one of the beds and then is kicked out. And so I think it's interesting how the show again is managing this balancing act of different characters who have different places, and yet, especially if they become a fan favorite, which obviously that character did, like at the end of last season. How do you find ways to get them into the mix? I gotta admit, I cackled. Like I'm getting towards the end of the episode, but I was like, you sons of bitches, like that. That's how because a couple times they've made cracks about like, do you want to stick around? Like it's a hard day, and you get multiple people going like, absolutely not. Like this is your problem. And just the setup they have for this character in particular is like, great. All right. Well, I guess he's just here now is really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, he is a real badass character. Like the idea of like, you're going in with SWAT teams and you can intubate on the road and all the stuff like,
the characters that have a long unsaid history, like the relationship he has with Dr. Robbie, like a lot of the Dr. Robbie's interactions, there's like with Dana and stuff like that. There's clearly they have a history, but a lot of it is like him teaching younger doctors, and we're seeing the history made between them. It's always fun when there is an older doctor that, hey, like there's just a rich history to mine or gesture at between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There is the case of Orlando Diaz, which is continuing on from the previous week. He tries to just leave the hospital unilaterally. Dr. Mohan is surprised because they had already figured out a way for him to pay a lot less and therefore not be further in medical debt. But then he reveals that he already owes $100,000 in medical debt that is undisclosed to his family. And he says, quote, "Every minute I stay is a meal, school supplies," end quote. This is, I would say, is a little bit pulpity, a little bit preachy of like, yes, extremely like medical debt is a massive problem in the United States, and it is destructive to people's lives, and it kind of changes people's options. So Dr. Mohan bends over backwards to keep him there and offers to bring him stuff to allow him to stay healthy at home. But when she returns, he's already gone. Mohan had already gotten everything that he would need, but she's very discouraged that he's gone. Dr. Abbott is there and encourages her to take an Uber to his house and deliver it to him. And she kind of asks the rhetorical question, who's going to pay for the Uber? And he says, I'll pay for it, which is a very lovely moment showing that these are doctors that really, really care about their patients. But yes, Patrick, this is, I would say, a kind of preachy moment in the Pit of just this character's kind of sole function is he is in medical debt, and medical debt is a big problem, and it prevents people from getting their needed treatment. I don't know if it necessarily goes too much deeper than that. Any thoughts, Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are instances in the Pit where it feels like someone is just scrolling down a list of like issues in the medical field, and then a character becomes a stand-in for that. I think the Pit at its best is taking real issues and wrapping them up in interesting characters. I don't know that when the whole family was there, right? When we had the dynamic about like the GoFundMe, it's like, oh, okay, like there's some really interesting familial dynamics that are happening here that might be interesting to explore. That family goes home, and then we're just left with a guy talking about, and again, I think we both are in agreement. It's obviously a very real problem, but I think he is the kind of character that is the Pit at its weakest when it's not finding a way to weave really interesting, relatable family drama that is born out of real problems in the medical system and how the characters in the show work to address it. I'm not I'm sort of shocked that Mohan at some point wasn't like, well, don't worry, we have a lawyer on staff that can like help you like consolidate the medical, you know what I mean? Like it's just sometimes it's a little okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
but who
fine.
knows? Maybe they'll turn it. Maybe the wife and the daughter are going to come back, and it's going to be a whole thing. Who knows?
So that's the way it would sort of save this plot for me.
Right.
Is like if that's where it ends, is just to set up this moment between these two characters over like either traveling to deliver the supplies or putting the supplies in an Uber to be delivered. Also, what are the ethical implications? Like looking up their address to like send them, medical supplies in an Uber. I don't know.
Right.
I do think like it's.
Yeah, and that could be complicated. Like, what if like who's there?
Well,
and
now they can't do it because of what happens at the end. How are they going to get his address anyway?
Right.
So nice gesture, but it's not. I don't think you're going to get it there, Bucko.
Yeah. Along those lines, there's another subplot this episode of Harlow, this deaf woman that we met in, I think, the very first episode or the second episode of the show. She is trying to communicate with Dr. Santos, but can't seem to do so. What she is like, they use this thing called a VRI, a video relay interpreter, but the video relay interpreter is broken for reasons that we will soon understand. And there is a headache. She has headache and abdominal pain, and she's trying to say, here's what she says. She says, my headache was terrible last week, but now my abdominal pain, ... And then I assume the abdominal pain is worse now. But then Dr. Santos wants to do a CT, but Harlow's like, no, that's not what I want. And Dr. Santos doesn't seem to be understanding that at all. I don't know who said it. Was it you or Sarah or someone else? Like, I think pretty sure it was you. Like, I think they're clearly setting up Dr. Santos for like some kind of catastrophic error because of her tiredness this season, right? Like,
yeah,
that's what we think. And we're starting to see her fraying around the edges and making mistakes. We do see her falling asleep in the bathroom, and as she stands up, we see that Dr. Santos is somebody that cuts herself. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yes.
So I do think it's actually really clever the way the show reveals these little bit, like in just like very brief shots, just like very brief little glimpses.
And maybe that'll go unaddressed, right? Like maybe we won't necessarily
Yeah.
learn the specifics of what's going on there. It just adds additional color and texture to a character that is clearly undergoing an immense amount of stress. And like interestingly, like across the season, it's shown to be like profoundly competent, right? And like that is recognized by multiple doctors who are not just doing it to sort of punch them up emotionally in a stressful job, but like recognizing really good like doctorial behavior like in stressful situations. But she is clearly at a breaking point. Like there is just too much on her shoulders, and it does feel like the real worry is that is going to collapse like a house of cards at some point in a way that is probably bad for Santos and is potentially bad for, you know, a patient.
I do think the Harlow subplot so far, like we don't know what it's going to be, but so far is a fairly pulpity subplot about how difficult it is for disabled people to access medical care, right? It's like,
I will say though, like that part is pulpity, but on the flip side, this is a show that's like, and we go out of our way to take care of we go out of our way in this hospital to take care of our patients. Unless like they have to use sign language to communicate, and then like I don't know, kind of fuck them, I guess. Like a little busy in here, you know what I mean?
Right. Even these extremely liberal people, very progressive and attentive, have their spots where they don't necessarily pay as much attention.
And I think that is a part that the show is picking at, is because we repeatedly get these instances in which this woman is just completely exasperated over the non-committal way. Because I've been screaming forever, like, just give her a pen, man. Like,
I think there's something like legal. They're legally required to provide an interpreter, which is why I think they.
I'm
need
sure,
to do
but at some point, it's like I feel like we could do some basic medical analysis, and you know, again, like, you know, as is brought up in the episode, like, well, we're just going to give her like a CT scan or whatever. I'm forgetting perhaps the exact
that was it. That was it.
And they're like, why? Like, I don't know, because. And it's like they're only doing the because they haven't actually had a chance to. And
Dr. Robbie calls her out on it, which is good. He says like, hey, let's not treat her unless she wants to be treated.
And I do think that it is meaningful in a show that is otherwise like we make our mistakes, but we go the extra mile. It's like not going the extra mile here.
Unless you're
someone's been slipping through the cracks.
That's right.
That's
right. Yeah, exactly. So there are a couple people that come in due to heat stroke. Daniel Scott washing his car and starts seizing, and I think one other person that comes in, Elliot Green, who has a syncopal episode, which is basically fainting at football practice. So I don't know that those have evolved into anything interesting yet, but they might. We get a follow up on Jackson, the guy who is having schizophrenic episode, and they talk to his family, and during that conversation, it's revealed that Jackson's dad's brother took his own life. To which Jackson's sister Jada is surprised Uncle Ken, she asks. Javati manages to find Jada and talks to her in a very compassionate way, totally redeeming herself from last couple episodes when she didn't handle the situation particularly well. We also get a critical piece of background information about Dr. Al-Hashimi. She calls a number that answers as the Pittsburgh Neuroscience Group and says she's a patient of Dr. Fairgraves and needs to speak to him if he's on a call. So we don't know what that is, what she's dealing with, but it's clear that she has some kind of my guess is that she has some kind of medical issue that either just coincidentally occurred while she was working with Jackson's family, or the condition that Jackson's family is struggling with is similar to what she's dealing with. But yeah, I don't have any guesses as to what that is, but it seems like it could be potentially serious. There is the case of Roxy. I do just want to say that, Patrick, it has been really fascinating to observe the Pitt fandom online over the course of the last few weeks. They are, I would say, a good portion of the Pitt fandom, not people who listen to or watch this podcast. I would describe them as quite unhinged. I think they are treating the Pitt as a Grey's Anatomy style show when it is much more like a PBS documentary type of show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that said, I do think this season they are leaning a little bit more into doctors being flirty and gesturing at potential relationships between them in a way that I did not feel was present basically at all in season one. Maybe it amounts to nothing, but like I felt like there was no flirting happening in season one. And season two does have like pretty like I need to get laid or like different patients flirting with the doctors. It does feel like there's there is actually more of a current around that. But I don't think it's I don't think it's pandering to the weird. I think the Pitt fandom, you're fine. It's the Pitt standum that is like the problem. Like you can be a Pitt fan, a mega fan, and I don't want to lump you in with the shippers. Like that is a different part of the a culture.
Right. Well, so specifically what's going on with the Roxy plotline is obviously there's been weird vibes going on with Roxy and her husband. And people are speculating things like the husband is having sex with the death doula.
Stop it.
And that's why it's so weird. And it's not. It's actually much more serious and sad than that, which is Roxy doesn't want to go to her house to die. That's really what it is, right? She says she doesn't want to go home. She wants to stay at the hospital. She says,
I don't want you living with my ghost.
I will happily live with your ghost.
Because she's kind of had this routine every day where she's at home and she's struggling to survive and going through the hospice motions. And I guess she wants to kind of like separate her home life from hospital life. But her husband really wants to get them home. She thinks like she's gonna be more comfortable there. They have all their tools there. They're not surrounded by tons of sick people. And so he is quite distressed about this. But despite what his feelings are, they cannot force her to go home. She obviously has a condition that would be admittable in a hospital and has decided that she wants to stick around. So that's kind of where things resolve. Robbie tells her husband, supporting her and her choices is the most remarkable gift you can give her at this time.
Is the best thing that you can do for her.
End quote. Patrick Klepek, any thoughts on this subplot?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting parts about this subplot is how relatable all the angles are, right? I mean, this is the comment I made last time where, I think a lesser show or a different show would lean into the potential wink over like what's happening. And instead, it seems like it's a very caring, if perhaps sometimes slightly over caring, like husband and father, two well-adjusted children. Everyone is just going through a really shitty situation and dealing with it in a different way. Like even when the wife cracks about, not wanting to be a ghost at home, the son, one of the older son, I believe, says like, can we please not stop talking about like ghosts and mom dying? And I'm like, all reasonable reactions in which there is no clean outcome for everybody involved, other than it does seem like the wife is sort of ready to say goodbye, but it's kind of not her choice. Modern medicine is kind of keeping her around, I think, longer than she has the will for it. And I'll be really interested to see what happens over the course of this, like how this plot, like it's someone I thought she was just going to go home. I was like, all right, that's how this plot is going to resolve. If they've kept her around, they've kept her around for a reason. And maybe it's no more complicated than she has a complication and gets her dying wish, which is like over the course of the second half of the season, she gets to pass in the hospital, or is like too troubled to go home. But I'm interested to see where it feels like at the very least we're leading to like an actual final like end of life honest conversation between the husband and wife that they kind of are tiptoeing around a little bit about just being directly honest about what each person wants from these final moments. And we're not quite there yet, but they're getting pushed in that direction.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see how, is this going to be a major character in the second half, or is she going to go to the upstairs room in the hospital and we'll never hear from them again? Who knows?
Yeah, possible.
Yeah. This brings us to the case of Ilana, which is one of the bigger, more impactful cases of the week. Ilana is a assault victim and comes into the hospital and needs a SANE, SANE, assault nurse examiner. In a very pulpity part of the show, Dana explains what that does. It's somebody who does forensic exams, hands them over to police, and sometimes even testifies like in trial. SANEs are very valuable, and more nurses should train for it. That's what she says. So, kind of a PSA in otherwise a very intense subplot in this episode. They take Ilana to the most private room, and Dana does a very compassionate patient examination. We learn a little bit more about Ilana's story. I'm going to share some more of those details, so just FYI, if you're triggered by this kind of thing. But it seems like Ilana was at a July 4th barbecue with a lot of friends and helped to set up the barbecue, but then somebody at the barbecue assaulted her. I believe the guy was drunk. Throughout the episode, we see the exam play out in quasi real time. We see how invasive and challenging it is. And then we see late in the episode, Ilana decides to terminate the exam because she decides she doesn't want to ruin this guy's life and she doesn't want to make it a big thing. And I don't know if she's going to come back and finish the exam. Like, I think that's still like potentially a possibility. Dana makes it very clear, like Dana cannot leave the room until the exam is complete, which is part of the regulations around these kinds of things. I thought this was an incredibly powerful subplot. I thought it does an amazing job of illustrating why the laws against have a kind of inherent asymmetry to them. And what I mean by that is if you are a woman who is assaulted, you need to go into you need to do this exam ostensibly in order to collect all this evidence. But the show is really effectively shows how challenging such an exam can be just in general. It just feels like a lot of steps that need to be taken. And also the person is generally doing it on probably the worst day of their entire lives, or certainly one of the worst days. And it just like feels enormously difficult to do. But it is something that is expected in many ways in order to bring claims to court or in the legal system. So I thought this was very powerful, very moving. Patrick Klepek, any reaction to the Ilana subplot?
Yeah, and I also thought they dedicate a lot of time to this subplot. And maybe our listeners who are more familiar in the medical field can correct me on this if I am reading this wrong. But my suspicion is a lot of the times what's happening in the pit is we are, 2xing, 3xing like processes as how they play out. Not because they're skipping over it, but it's just the efficiencies of storytelling. How long do you sit within a specific procedure in how long it would take in real time versus dramatically what are you getting out of it in the show? And so oftentimes I feel like in the pit, we are moving through a procedure at the rate that it's best for the drama as opposed to what is in real time with the procedure itself. Here, I mean, to some extent that is still true, right? Like it's it's an hour long show. But in terms of screen real estate, they take a glacial approach to this. I think to really do what medical shows and the Pit can do at its best, which is to take the step-by-step process of the diagnosis seriously as drama. And I mean, drama and just sort of like what is interesting and caring about the professionals who put themselves in situations to be there for people.
Agreed completely. And I think Dana does such a wonderful job managing Alana and trying to make her feel safe and explaining what's happening with the entire process.
Do you want to take a break, huh? No.
It's a remarkable performance just from an acting perspective, and it's also just remarkable showing the process and all of the complications, the pacing, like you said, the steps, and just how challenging and invasive it is, right? To go through something like that. So anyway, really bold thing to put on television, and I applaud the show for it. A couple of other minor subplots. We meet Javadi's dad, who also works in the hospital. He introduces her to this woman named Amy June, who is the chief of dermatology, and I guess they're trying to convince her to work in places that are basically not the ER. So we'll see how that resolves. We get a scene of Dr. Mel talking with her sister on the phone, who's not feeling well. Get a little update on that. And then there is that scene also with Santos singing a lullaby to the baby in a different language. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. We get kind of these little glimpses of these characters' backstories. Yeah, anything else you want to highlight, Patrick, or anything that was notable to you?
I think it's a killer cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have to acknowledge what actually happened at the end of the episode.
Hooting, hollering, standing on my couch, wondering at what point when the season's going to amp up in some way. Which way is it going to come? Didn't expect this one, and I love it.
We learn what happened at Westbridge, which is that there has been a cyber attack. And so all the systems are down at Westbridge, and also it's my sense was they're voluntarily bringing them down at the Pit as well. Like
Yes.
that was kind of in order to avoid anything bad happening, and so they needed to resort to offline. I actually think this is great because it's not as viscerally upsetting as a mass shooting, but also you get to see the doctors work in a different environment or different situation and kind of see what skills come out, right? So, Patrick, anything you're anticipating specifically?
Well, in some ways, there's been an AI conversation that's been happening over the course of this season, which is like, what could be a new set of computerized tools and technology to make the doctors' lives easier? Well, computers are also already deeply intertwined in the lives of these doctors and their relation with their patients. When we remove the existing sets of tools and structures, what happens?
Right.
And that is what I have to imagine that is going to have some consequences. And I'm fascinated to find out what those are.
It's gonna be fun.
Same. Every week on this podcast, we try to do a doctor or medical worker of the week, somebody who we just think deserves to be highlighted for their performance this week. I'm going to start and say that for me, it's Dana again, because that was my doctor of the week or medical worker of the week last week. And I just think for her immense compassion, meticulousness, and just real skill with navigating a really challenging situation with this assault victim, I think she deserves all the credit in the world as a huge asset to this institution of the Pitt. Patrick Klepek, who is your medical worker of the week?
Well, I knew you were going to take the obvious one, so I then had to scroll through to something. We don't talk about these in advance. I'm like, well, the obvious one would be Dana.
Okay, wow. Game theory, gaming this out, Patrick.
So, funny enough, it's still within the same subplot, which is Emma, the sort of kind of what did they characterize her as? What is her actual?
I think she's an RN in training, is my sense. Right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And I really like the actor, Lolita Howard, so far, and I think she has a really good moment where she recognizes a place where she can be helpful instead of just observatory. But I wanted to point her out because it's difficult to. this character is almost structural, which is like, how do we invent a character so that the show has to explain things that are going on that otherwise might...
Audience surrogate, right?
Yes. Well, you just Dana's been here a long time, and maybe she's going to explain things to the to her patient, but there's lots of stuff that's going to go unsaid because it's just routine work that we've done before, and thus how is that explained to the audience and to the camera? And it's hard to make that not just seem like it's a structural plot device, but also like a pretty decent character. Now, she's not given a ton to do, but I think she's given enough that it does not feel like it's just a crutch for the writers to find ways to explain things to the audience. And so the fact that I'm invested in this character to any degree, and it also makes the show more accessible to understand the whys and hows. Like her character has just enough to her that it doesn't feel like the show is talking to me in a Wikipedia-like way. And so I just wanted to shout out to the show and to the character and to the actor that I think they're doing like really challenging structural work to like make the audience buy in that I think would be very easy to go wrong. And I think it actually works really well on the show.
Agreed. So Emma is your medical worker of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Very good choice. Wow, you really zigged where I zagged.
Dug deep.
Yeah. All right, great choices. All right, folks. Every week we love to hear and read your feedback, emails, comments, etc. So I want to go over a couple of them today. You can always write into us at decodingtv@gmail.com, comment at decodingtv.com, or comment at youtube.com/@decodingtv. Simon writes into decodingtv@gmail.com about our comments last week about Dana not contacting Landon while he was off of work. He says, in relationship to Dana not contacting Landon while he's off work, I work in a healthcare social care setting, and it is my experience that if a coworker crosses professional boundaries in the way that Langdon did, then they will likely be suspended and investigated. They would then be offered support following this. During these times, during the investigation, work colleagues will often be told explicitly not to contact the person, especially during the investigation process, as they may be material witnesses to the misconduct. I know the show does not state this specifically, but it could also explain why there's no contact during this time. Also, 10 months in my experience, quite a short time for an investigation like this to occur, end quote. So that's Simon. And yeah, I think Simon's comments make a lot of sense. And maybe the Langdon Dana stuff was just there for drama as opposed to this is an actual representation of how the investigation would occur. But appreciate that comment. We also got another comment, a couple comments about AI and the use of AI in the show. So Eric over at decodingtv.com says this, quote, I'm a little conflicted about the AI plotline. The point about the harms of a 2% error rate is crucial, and the AI hallucinating an appendicitis history is exactly the kind of thing that gets someone hurt. But Santos isn't cutting corners because she's lazy. She's choosing between inhuman working conditions that residents just accept as normal and an imperfect tool that promises a little relief from that, but is dangerous if relied on. That's a system problem, not a technology problem. Same episode where the admin thinks donuts make up for understaffing. Where I get conflicted is that in my own life, AI has caught multiple incorrect diagnoses from doctors for me, my spouse, and my dog. When we brought the information back, the doctors agreed every time. It's genuinely added years to all of our lives. Honestly, I'd feel safer knowing my doctor was using AI to double check their thinking or generate ideas than knowing they weren't. The danger isn't AI in medicine. It's using it to replace thinking instead of supporting it and deploying it in environments where misuse is likely, all in the name of profit. What Santos is doing is very different from a well-slept doctor using AI to catch diagnosis they might have missed, and in my experience, do miss all the freaking time. I hope the show lets us stay messy rather than making AI a simple villain. The Pitt is too smart for that, end quote. Patrick got another email that's similar to that, but I'm curious what your reaction to that is.
Yeah, the idea that, I mean, look, yeah, if the pitch on AI was how do we aid the human experience to be better, that sounds great. Then we can talk about all of the messy ethical implications of training data and ecological implications. Like, that's not the pitch. It often feels like is what we're getting. So could not be happier to hear that someone is using a piece of technology to help themselves and their family. But the idea that that is where most of this will be used in that direction my cynicism does not lead me to that being the most likely case, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric makes some really great points. That I do agree with him that it is a system issue and not a technology issue.
But it is using.
I
think it's using. I think that's it's using technology as a band-aid for the system without actually addressing the underlying parts of the system's
Right.
issues, and then probably making the system. Maybe the system's issues
Right.
not worse, but just different.
Right.
But you buy yourself time by claiming, like, to an executive board, like, well, we're going to fix it with AI, and also, like, we'll save costs by also gutting the staff as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the email, and yeah, it can be useful, but I think just because it is a system issue doesn't mean it's necessarily okay. Also, I am very curious how nuanced. Like, I wonder if that's one level of nuance too much for the Pit. I wonder if it can really go there. Ricky writes into decodingtv@gmail.com. The Pit, for many people, like medical and non-medical, has been a revelatory appointment series for me and resonates at a core level. I think in particular, the way it's tackling the push and pull between the mission and financial piece that often gets overlooked in other shows. I work with many patients who are uninsured or are on Medicaid, fearful of ICE, have to manage diabetes with just a cupboard of white bread and peanut butter in it, and have medical histories and chronic conditions that reflect these complexities. I love the relationship we have with our patients. I've had people show up in our clinic in the middle of a heart attack to see me instead of going directly to the ER because they trusted us more than going to the hospital. Managing these heavy burdens, though, is not what I find difficult about the job nearly 9 years in. It is the increasing squeeze that is put on physicians to wring out more productivity and patient revenue at the cost of patient care that has led to burnout and moral injury among many. And I think that is what the show captures these moments so well. When Santos's charting became a central plot point this season, I immediately texted a colleague of mine who recently quit our clinic because despite delivering incredible care with minimal resources, she was run out by administrators who hounded her about notes being signed late, often because she was putting patient care first. This is the shit that has led to such a strained healthcare system and leads to increasingly fraying relationships between patients and clinicians. The one thing I'll say, though, and I don't think it's necessarily the fault of the Pit, is that they're already behind on AI. It is very clear that millions upon millions will be dumped into integrating AI into health systems, and while I think there's tremendous potential to help clinicians, the only guarantee is that there are going to be thousands of frontline workers, like people who take calls, who send medications or who send messages or medication refill requests, who will lose their jobs so health systems can cut costs and put the money behind fancy surgical procedures that may or may not be urgent but generate a hell of a lot of money. At the end of the day, healthcare is still a business and often a ruthless one behind the scenes, end quote. Anyway, I thought that was a great email coming from a healthcare worker. This, by the way, Ricky, I should have pointed out, is a primary care physician and medical director in an underserved urban neighborhood, end quote. So that is the perspective that Ricky is writing in from. And the points about, like, the administration of healthcare burning people out more than the actual medical care, I think is really, really well captured in the Pit. But also Ricky's prediction is AI is like the Pit is already not even doing a good job of capturing where AI is now in terms of its a great integration, that it does seem to be inevitable in some ways, and that it will lead to thousands of jobs lost, which is kind of the point you were just making, right, Patrick? So, Any other thoughts, Patrick, before we wrap up today?
No, except I don't know where this season is going, and I'm really, that's a cool place to be, where
Absolutely.
It's a show in which the formula is part of the appeal. There's a comfort in sort of dynamics you expect, but I think so far we'll see how it plays out. We haven't seen past this episode. They're setting up to shake up those familiar dynamics in an interesting way, which is kind of all you can ask for from a show that you're going to watch every year.
100%. We'd love to receive your comments and feedback, especially if you're working in the medical industry or in the medical field. Lots of people writing in, sharing their reactions on how realistic stuff is. Love to read that stuff. Please keep it coming to decodingtv@gmail.com or youtube.com/@decodingtv. Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.